State your names for the record. Officer Landon Pierce. Officer Daniels Fletcher. Judge Elias Vance folds his glasses with the same calm he saves for sentences and second chances. I recognize you both. The gallery stills. If your eyes had paused at that stop sign the way my car did, we wouldn't be here. He sets the glasses beside the gavel. For clarity, today's case involves another plaintiff. If my own night becomes evidence, Judge Lorraine Park takes this bench. Until then, address the court, not the crowd. Pierce's jaw tightens. We enforced the law evenly, Your Honor. Evenly, Vance repeats. Define it. Fletcher wets his lip. We followed training. Then you'll welcome seconds, angles, facts, Vance says, voice level as a carpenter's bubble. And you'll leave your hunches outside. Before we dive into this shocking story of justice and accountability, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. If you believe equal treatment under the law shouldn't change with a person's skin, hit like and subscribe. Now, how did Judge Vance arrive at this reckoning? Last night lived in the rain. At the mouth of a grocery lot, a white stop sign stood like a quiet commandment. Elias Vance's sedan reached the line and held 1, 2, 3 brake lights steady, turn signal ticking polite time. He rolled forward the space of a breath. Blue-red detonated. One cruiser cut across his quarter panel. Another nosed his rear, pinning the sedan like a pawn against a rail. 2 badges walked out of the storm. Tap, tap. Pierce at the window, authority measured in 2 knuckles. License, registration, insurance. Vance slid his wallet onto the dash, set the cards beneath the dome light. Everything's visible. You rolled that stop, Pierce told him. Vance met his eyes. Count it with me. 1, 2, 3. Behind Pierce, Fletcher hovered by the taillight, hand a shade too near his holster, gaze skittering between rain and rank. We observed the violation, he added, voice tight. From where? Vance asked. From behind, Fletcher said. By eye. A bodycam chirped awake. Step out of the vehicle, Pierce said, reciting the card every veteran keeps behind the teeth. For what purpose? Vance asked. For officer safety, Pierce answered, and the cuffs closed with 2 quick clicks that sounded bigger than the night. Across the lane, a mother in a dented minivan raised a palm. He stopped. I saw the lights. Her daughter leaned forward with a phone, pinching to zoom. The frame wobbled, but the 2 truths held. The white rectangle that read, "Stop," and the red lamps that burned compliant in front of it. Sir, Pierce said, do you consent to a search of the vehicle? No consent, Vance answered. Not without cause. This corner's been hot, Pierce shot back. We can't take chances. Hot isn't probable, Vance said. It's temperature. Fletcher flicked a look at the gate, as if the letters might rearrange to favor him. They didn't. Rain hissed. Somewhere above the exit, an overhead camera kept its own quiet count. Step back, face the car, Pierce ordered. I'll comply, Vance said. I already did at the sign. The mother called again, louder. My camera got it. Brake lights held 3 seconds. Turn signal was on. The girl's thumbs worked. On the screen, a caption formed like a dare to the block. Did he stop? She hit share. The arrow leapt into the neighborhood app and ran. That's Grandview and 7th. Looks like he did. Anyone have the timestamp? Within minutes, the clip was larger than the rain. Pierce circled the sedan, peering at the rear plate as if a dim bulb could rewrite the last minute. Plate light looks low. The sign was bright, Vance said. So were my brakes. Sir, don't make this harder than it has to be, Pierce warned. Harder than stopping at a sign? Vance replied. Please cooperate, Fletcher tried. I am, Vance said, precisely. He felt the steel, not the fear. He felt the rain, not the insult. He kept his spine where it began, upright. The station smelled like coffee left too long. Fluorescence flattened everyone to the same tired color. Pierce walked Vance to a counter where a plastic tray waited for keys and wallet. The desk sergeant glanced up, clocking calm where most men pant. Name? Elias Vance, he said, giving it plain. He did not add titles. He did not trade on them. Pierce leaned in. We can log a warning or write the citation. Your choice. Vance looked at the clock. You don't have a lawful stop. You have weather. Fletcher's fingers worried a button, click, click, the offbeat following them inside. We saw a roll, he repeated, smaller now. By eye, Vance said softly, from behind. The desk sergeant held out a palm for the report. Bodycam on the contact? He asked. Yes, Pierce said. Overhead camera at the gate? Vance added, not as leverage as fact. Likely, the sergeant answered, already sounding tired of the night. He skimmed, frowned at blank spaces where cause should be fatter. We're releasing pending review. Pierce bristled. We can't take chances. And we can't take bad cases, the sergeant said, practical as a stapler. He slid the tray back. Sir, you're free to go. Keys, wallet, breath. In the lobby, Vance's phone woke like a light underwater. The neighborhood app had turned into a chorus. Did he stop? Looks like it. Here's a synced clip with the overhead. Count the beats. Someone circled the brake lights in yellow, stamped a digital metronome beneath. 1, 2, 3. Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist that held the street together. Vance walked to his car without hurry, opened the door, and sat in the silence a moment longer than necessary. He looked at his wrists, small gray moons fading, and then at the mirror, where the sign would be visible if the lot were still in front of him. It wasn't. The night had moved. He drove home the way a careful man reads a line aloud to make sure it means what it says. On his kitchen chair, a folded robe waited inside its garment bag. In a drawer, a small gavel slept. He did not touch either. He washed his hands. He set out the medicine for the morning. He checked the locks. The phone kept breathing. 2 cameras, same story. Tomorrow, the city would learn the rest. Tonight, he had stopped. They hadn't. The house wakes to a soft clink of ceramic and the blue pulse of a phone on the counter. Morning stripes the kitchen in clean bars of light. Elias Vance sits at the table in a t-shirt and quiet. His wife, Alana, district attorney to everyone else, sets coffee by his hand and does not ask about the night. Keep your dignity, she says. Not advice, a boundary. Down the hall, their sons huddle over a tablet. The neighborhood app fills the screen with a shaky frame. Red brake lights, a white stop, rain buzzing like static. Comments march past. He stopped. Did he? Here's the overhead. Count it. Someone has already circled the lamps in yellow and added a metronome. 1, 2, 3. Can we post? The younger asks, more thunder than question. No, Elias answers, steady. We don't swing at every shadow. We turn the lights on. He carries the coffee to the dining room, where the garment bag hangs open to breathe. The robe whispers against its lining. He doesn't put it on yet. Walk me through your plan, Alana says from the doorway. Simple, he says. Today's case is another plaintiff. I keep the bench for procedure. If my knight enters the record, I step off. Judge Lorraine Park takes the chair. Say it just like that. She nods. People hear simple. In the living room, the boys switch to a side-by-side. Shaky phone paired with the overhead. Argument has less room to breathe. The older glances up. Are they in trouble? They're in the front row, Elias says. Trouble is a different word. Today isn't about me. Outside. The street has been rinsed but not erased. He drives downtown inside a silence that refuses to be fear. On the courthouse steps, 2 reporters loiter by habit, not tip. He answers with a nod that means later, maybe, probably not. On the second floor, fluorescent light shines a little too hard, the way it always does. A corkboard holds today's dockets under pushpins. Small fonts, large consequences. 10 o'clock, Pierce, Landon, Fletcher, Daniels, defendants. Plaintiff, Ramirez, Thomas, civil rights. He touches the paper once. Not for luck, for clarity. Wyatt appears with a tablet. Judge, a heads up. Someone mirrored the neighborhood clip to local news. They're asking for comment. No comment from Chambers. No comment from home, Elias says. Wyatt nods. Figured. The robe goes on in Chambers like a curtain drawing. He ties it without flourish. The gavel waits where it always waits. He does not touch it. Not yet. On a side chair sits a shoebox from his first week on the bench. Index cards in his own handwriting. The top one reads what it has always read. You are not the story. Keep the room clean. His phone vibrates again. The thread has grown legs. A slow-motion sync. Captions transcribed. The line, for officer safety, highlighted. The moment that hooks him isn't the cuffs. It's a child's whisper caught by accident. Did he stop? As if she is afraid of what the answer will change. He pockets the phone. He pockets a mint, because nerves ignore resumes. He opens the door to the corridor's low weather. A bailiff falls in step. The murmur inside the courtroom is already tuned to the frequency of rumor and breath. Keep the bench for procedure, step off for truth. Both are justice. Today's case isn't about me, but their front row. He takes the bench and steadies the air with silence. If his knight is summoned by name, he will keep the promise he made in the kitchen. Hold the line, keep his dignity, and let the light do the talking. Outside, the city moves like any other morning, not yet aware it's about to be measured in seconds. Inside, a clock clicks one ordinary tick that feels like a start. The courtroom holds a clean, surgical quiet. ADA Naomi Brooks stands at the plaintiff's table. Calm spine, squared folders, questions already sharp. Across from her, Victor Hale rises with a practiced ease that wraps pressure in courtesy. Your Honor, the defense moves for recusal, Hale says. The video from last night is everywhere. The same officers who detained you are here. Any ruling risks the look of payback. Appearance alone undermines trust. Naomi doesn't waste air. Today's case is Ramirez versus Pierce and Fletcher. It does not involve the grocery lot. Continuity matters. The public's faith matters. We can honor both. Judge Elias Vance nods once. We'll hear the motion. Mr. Hale, your grounds beyond perception. Hale steps forward. Any credibility call about the officers will look personal. No wall you build will appear high enough. Which rulings on this calendar would be infected? Vance asks. Any discretionary decision that weighs their intent, Hale replies. Any order that prefers one memory over another. Ms. Brooks? Vance says. Our proposal is simple, Naomi answers. This court proceeds on Ramirez. If any witness or lawyer touches last night, those seconds, that location. Your Honor steps off. Judge Lorraine Park takes the chair for that segment. When the record returns to issues that aren't yours, you resume. The robe follows the facts. Hale tries another angle. A pause signals something is wrong. There is no jury today, Naomi says. There is a clock. The city pays for seconds either way. Vance turns to the defense table. Officers, do you intend to introduce testimony about my detention during this hearing? Pierce squares his shoulders. No, Your Honor. Fletcher looks down. No, Your Honor. Ms. Brooks? Vance asks. No, Your Honor, Naomi says. If that changes, we alert immediately. Vance speaks plainly, as if to a room of neighbors. A judge doesn't judge his own night. We separate the robe from the story. The question is whether we can do both justice and prudence here. Hale lifts his palms. Respectfully, Your Honor, separation is fiction while you remain. Naomi keeps her tone level. Or it's governance. A practical wall, visible to the public, applied in real time. A beat. Then, the room leans in. This is the moment the story could split in two. The safe path is to recuse completely. The bold path is to stay and face the criticism. Which would you choose? Tell me in the comments. A for recuse, B for stay. But what Judge Vance does next isn't on the ballot. It's a move that will redefine what a clean courtroom even means. You're about to be surprised. The motion to recuse is denied, for now, Vance announces. Hale starts to object, but Vance lifts a hand, not to silence, to frame. Today's case belongs to Mr. Ramirez. This court will hear it, Vance says. But we will build a wall the public can see without footnotes. Judge Lorraine Park will remain on standby. The side door opens. Judge Park steps into view, black robe, steady face, then waits just inside, a quiet promise the room can measure. Vance lays the rule down like track. If the record touches last night, if anyone says grocery, stop sign, video, or references my detention, we pause. I rise and leave the bench. Judge Park takes the chair and runs that portion. When testimony returns to matters that aren't mine, I resume. No theatrics. A clean handoff. A clean return. Hale looks for daylight. Threshold is whose call? Mine, guided by seconds, angles, facts, not mood, not rumor, Vance says. Counsel will not game this trigger. If you test it, I will see you. Naomi. The people are satisfied. Hale. Defense notes its objection for the record. Vance addresses the gallery because clarity is respect. Courtrooms are not blind to reality. They are blind to favoritism. We will not pretend last night did not happen. We will not let it steer today. He turns back to counsel. One more point. If I must testify about last night at any stage, I will do so under oath in Judge Park's courtroom like any witness. Until that day, if that day comes, this court will do its work. The gavel lands once. Not loud. Exact. Naomi rises for a brief housekeeping note. For the record, the people mark the overhead camera index from the grocery as a potential exhibit in Ramirez, time limited to that case only. Hale stands. Defense reserves all objections as to foundation and scope. Noted, Vance says, the word placed like a level on a beam. He signs a short order for the clerk. Standby protocol, list of triggers, immediate substitution, immediate return. The bailiff moves to copy. The room exhales into a new shape. This is not the thunder people came for. It is the seam that holds. Pierce stares at the grain of counsel table as if it might change. Fletcher's fingers hover, then still. Naomi closes one binder and opens another to a tab the color of caution. Hale smooths his tie and calculates new routes. Vance rests a palm on the bench. The decision feels exactly like the good ones always do. Expensive, necessary, explainable to a stranger at a bus stop. He has chosen the middle path, not because it is dramatic, but because daylight will survive it. 2 lines remain to thread the hour. A judge doesn't judge his own night. We separate the robe from the story. He nods to the clerk. Ms. Brooks, call your first witness on Ramirez. Outside this room, the poll runs its own trial. Inside, the work begins. Proceed, Vance says, and the day obeys. The clerk calls the first witness. Thomas Ramirez. He takes the stand, lifts his hand, and swears in. Ordinary jacket, ordinary tone. Ada Naomi Brooks steps up. Where were you stopped? Elm and Willow, he says. By the laundromat. By whom? Officers Pierce and Fletcher. Naomi nods to the monitors. Exhibit 1, Dashcam. Night. Dry pavement. A compact sedan ahead. A cruiser 2 car lengths back. Audio snaps alive. Fletcher. Plate light looks dim. Pierce. We'll check. Light it up. A chirp, blue-red. The sedan signals right and eases over. The signal blinks before the lane change. The car stops clean. Pierce at the window. License, registration, insurance. Ramirez hands them over. Is there a problem? Pierce. Plate light is low. Also saw a late signal. Naomi lets the clip play. Pierce. Mind if we take a quick look? Ramirez. Do you have a warrant? Pierce. Just consent. Ramirez. No consent. On Bodycam, the next 22 minutes unfold not as an investigation, but as a slow squeeze. A flashlight beam hunts the cabin. Questions drift from traffic to character. Where you headed? Ever been arrested? No citation is ever written. The stop wasn't about the light. It was about the look. Naomi. 22 minutes and no citation. Nothing further. Defense counsel Victor Hale rises, smooth. Mr. Ramirez, long day. Work in laundry. Could fatigue blur your memory of the signal? I remember the clicks and the mirror. I was careful. Hale sits. Naomi turns to the court. Pretext is lawful if there is a real violation. The question is whether we measure or guess. Because rights shrink when guesses wear uniforms and minutes become pressure. Stopping more, finding less. Has pretext outgrown truth? Records custodian, please. A woman from records is sworn. Naomi holds up a stack. Stop forms filed by officers Pierce and Fletcher over 6 months of their shared shift? Yes. Read the stated reasons on the first 5. She scans. Failure to stop fully. Evasive glance. Late signal. Suspicious lane change. Equipment light dim. Any notes of citations? Warnings only. No citations in these 5. Naomi slides the top form under the document camera. Small print, familiar and vague. Failure to stop fully. Evasive glance. The lens does not know skin. Forms rarely know detail. Can a form weigh more than an oath? City data analyst. A man with wire-rimmed glasses takes the stand. Charts rise on the screen. Naomi. What do we see first? The Pierce-Fletcher shift stops more cars per hour than any other team in the precinct. And by race. He moves to the next slide. 2 bars stand side by side, blunt and undeniable. The stop rate for black drivers nearly double. The hit rate, the percentage of stops that actually find a violation, less than half. At the defense table, Fletcher studies the wood grain. Pierce stares forward, jaw a hard line against numbers. Naomi's voice softens, letting the chart speak loud. So this team stops more, finds less, specifically when the driver is black. The disparity is statistically significant, the analyst says. Hale. Numbers, not motives, correct? Numbers, the analyst answers. They ask for an explanation. Naomi thanks him and returns to the forms. Exhibit 3, a random sample of 20. The document camera flips through. Failure to stop fully. Evasive glance, late signal, suspicious lane change, equipment light dim. She turns to the bench. The people move to admit exhibits 1 through 3. Hale. Objection as to foundation on 2 and 3. Naomi. Foundation is laid by custodian and analyst. Judge Vance. Objection overruled, exhibits admitted. Naomi breathes once and pivots. Officer Daniels Fletcher to the stand. He sits, swears in, fingers worrying the edge of the witness chair. Naomi. Officer Fletcher, on what basis did you determine Mr. Ramirez made a late signal? Fletcher. By eye. From behind the vehicle. By eye, Naomi repeats, letting the phrase hang. Let's use our ears instead. She turns to the screen. Roll Dashcam from 10 seconds before the stop. Audio up. The courtroom stills to listen. Then it comes, small and clear under the engine's hum. Click, click, click. 3 distinct ticks of a turn signal before the sedan begins to move lanes. Not a memory. A sound. A recorded fact. Hale closes his eyes for a breath. Fletcher pales under the lights. Naomi doesn't look his way. Thank you, officer. She faces the record. We are building this carefully. 1 stop, 1 form, 1 chart. The pattern is not a headline. It is a set of habits. She calls the custodian back for a single stroke. In the last 6 months, how often did the Pierce Fletcher shift record consent searches after small equipment or signaling stops? 37%. And the hit rate on those searches? Under 5%. Naomi nods. Thank you. Nothing further on this segment. Judge Vance leans toward the mic. What we have seen is limited to Mr. Ramirez and aggregated forms and rates for this shift. Pretext can be lawful. It is not a license. The court will weigh numbers with narratives. He glances toward the side door where Judge Park waits. The wall stands. Next witness, he says. The ladder climbs another rung. Small, deliberate, recorded, narrowing choices until excuses thin and evidence learns to carry its own weight. Each rung asks, do we count seconds or stories about them? The clerk announces, policy witness. Captain Dana Laird, training and professional standards, steps to the stand. Gray suit, steady posture, a face trained to carry rules without drama. ADA Naomi Brooks wastes no motion. Captain Laird, you supervise training and the evaluation metrics used for patrol? Yes, Laird answers. Hands folded, the neutral cadence of someone who knows each word is leverage. Naomi pivots to the document camera. Exhibit 4. The memo blooms across the screens, calm phrasing with heat tucked beneath. One line is bold enough to hum. Proactive stops plus 15% per quarter, while the sender's name and signature sit under thick black bars. Is this a department directive? It's a district-level performance memo, Laird says. Not a quota. A target, then, Naomi clarifies, for proactive stops. She turns the page. Exhibit 6. A training excerpt replaces the memo. The Academy grammar for rolling stops. It spells out what to look for. Wheels fully still, brake lights steady, no forward jerk, and what to record when feasible. time at rest, and the front tire's position at the line or crosswalk. The contrast hangs in the air. One document asks for more, the other asks for better. Is by eye from behind sufficient under these standards? Naomi asks. It's a start, Laird replies. We encourage objective markers. In the Ramirez stop, were any markers recorded? Laird turns a page she already expects to be blank. No. A small word. Heavy. Naomi faces the bench. Performance points don't write quota, but behavior sometimes reads like one. Her voice stays measured, as if reading a chart. She asks for Exhibit 7. The screen resolves into a table, 6 months of the Pierce-Fletcher shift, columns for stops per hour, consent requests, hit rate, complaints filed, complaints sustained. Captain Laird narrates rather than argues. They average more stops per hour than any other team on the watch. They request consent searches after a greater percentage of stops. Their hit rate sits below the precinct average. Complaints rise each quarter. Sustained findings are rare, but the volume of complaints keeps climbing. Numbers, not adjectives, do the talking, the analyst is recalled. His calm is almost clinical. Naomi traces a fingertip along the memo's date. After this plus 15% target, what happened in quarter 2? Stops rose 14%, he says. Hit rate fell 3, complaints rose 5. The numbers stack into a sentence no one wants to recite aloud. More pressure, more stops, less truth, more anger. At the defense table, Pierce's knuckles go white around a pen that can't edit a quarter. Fletcher seems to shrink into his collar. He studies the wood grain as if it might offer a different training slide, one that excuses guessing. But the table keeps breathing on the screens, and the new air in the room is the kind that tastes like accountability. Naomi returns to Captain Laird. She does not raise her voice. The academy told officers how to see a rolling stop. Wheels still, brake lights steady, no forward jerk. It told them what to write. Time at rest, tire position. Does the department audit for those markers? Not routinely, Laird answers. The absence sits where a safeguard should have been. Naomi faces the screens again. Read this like a clock, she says, moving across the quarters. Q1, high stops, flat hits, a trickle of complaints. Q2, memo drops, stops jump, hits dip, complaints rise. Q3, high holds, hits drag, complaints climb. Q4, the pattern hardens. No thunder. Just a line that keeps tilting until it points somewhere no one can ignore. Victor Hale tries to slow the momentum without stepping in front of it. Captain, these are guidelines, not commands? Correct. He sits with a measured nod, but the memo's glow lingers on the screens, and the training slide keeps its colder light. One asks for more, the other asks for better. The space between them is where corners of the city get bruised. Naomi centers the lesson without sermon. Pretext remains lawful when anchored to facts. When the anchor loosens under targets and guesswork, the boat drifts. She lets the metaphor settle like a compass on a dashboard. Objectivity must be measured, not imagined. The line sits down in the transcript, plain enough to outlast a news cycle or a shift change. Judge Vance summarizes for the record, voice level as a plumb line. The court has seen a growth memo whose language avoids the word quota, a training standard that demands measurable markers, and a 6-month table where stops increase while results decline and complaints rise. Performance points do not write quota. Behavior sometimes reads like one. The point is now part of the file. Across the aisle, Pierce watches a fixed point on the floor as if staring hard enough might turn numbers into smoke. Fletcher stops worrying the sleeve button that has followed him through 2 days of testimony. For a moment, both men look like they can hear the same thing everyone else hears now. The sound of counting, finally learning to count. Judge Vance glances once toward the side door where Judge Park waits. The standing promise of a clean handoff if last night enters the frame. It doesn't here. The wall holds. Naomi closes her binder. Hale marks his objections for the form, and the clerk lifts the next file. The ladder, rung by rung, keeps climbing toward a place where excuses run out. The clerk calls Officer Daniels Fletcher. He takes the stand, and his thumb finds the edge of a coat button. Rub, pause, click, a small, nervous rhythm. ADA Naomi Brooks begins without preamble. Officer Fletcher, how did you determine Mr. Ramirez rolled past the stop? By eye, he says, from behind the vehicle. She lets the phrase hang where everyone can see it. From behind, at night. She nods to the clerk. Exhibit 6. The Academy slide returns. Record time at rest, record tire position. Your form for Mr. Ramirez includes none of these objective markers you were trained on. Correct? He glances at the slide, then down at his hands. Correct. Naomi turns to the center screen. Let's use our ears instead. Exhibit 1, Dashcam, 10 seconds before the lane change. Audio up. The courtroom stills. From the speakers, the sound arrives like a small metronome cutting through the hum. Click, 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 3 clean ticks of a turn signal. Not a memory, a sound, a recorded fact. Victor Hale closes his eyes for a brief moment. Fletcher pales under the lights. Naomi doesn't look at him. Thank you, officer. She walks the room through the second camera. Overhead angle. The gate camera fills the display. The sedan sits square to the line. Brake lights burn steady. 1, 2, 3. Wheels motionless. The image is grainier, but it does not blink. It only counts. If brake lights can speak, why don't the forms listen? The training asked for seconds the way a clock asks for numbers. The paperwork answered with silence. At the defense table, Pierce's jaw hardens, then resets. Fletcher swallows and keeps his eyes on wood grain. The court reporter's keys whisper like rain, catching each word that the forms forgot. Naomi faces him again. Seconds, angles, facts. In the Ramirez stop, can you point to any measurement you recorded that confirms a rolling violation? Silence. His hand lifts from the button and stays on the rail. No, he says. Anything beyond by eye from behind? No. She keeps the pace unhurried, the tone of an instructor who prefers proof to posture. What was the first rule of documentation at the Academy? He blinks. Be checkable. Write what can be checked. He looks down at the blank fields of his own report, as if seeing them for the first time. The monitor returns to black. The button is quiet. The room feels lighter and heavier at once. Lighter because the fog has lifted. Heavier because of what the cleared air shows. Defense counsel Hale rises, careful to claim only what is still on the table. Officer, did you act in good faith? I believed I did, Fletcher answers. Nothing further. Naomi closes her pad with a soft fold. No further questions. Judge Elias Vance leans to the microphone. His voice is plain. For the record, Officer Fletcher determined the alleged violation by eye from behind, at night, and recorded no objective markers, no time at rest, no brake light notation, no tire line reference, no signal duration. The court will weigh these absences alongside the dashcam and overhead exhibits and the documentation standards shown. The summary lands like a level set on a beam. It aligns with what the last two segments built. A memo that asked for more, a manual that asked for better, and a table that showed the cost of guessing. None of that speaks to malice. All of it speaks to method, and method is what courts can fix. Fletcher steps down slowly. The thumb that worried the button finds his palm instead. In the gallery, you can feel a shift. The way a room accepts a new fact. The evidence ladder did not shout. It stacked. Sound, sight, paper, a line of zeros where numbers should live. Somewhere between by eye and no, confidence gave way to proof. Judge Vance watches Fletcher step down. The wall he built in the morning held, clean and strong, but he feels a tremor under his feet. The facts of the Ramirez case, the dim light, the late signal, the request for consent, are not just similar to his own night. They are its echo. The two stories are no longer parallel. They are converging. He knows what Naomi Brooks will have to do next. He knows the promise he made to himself, to Alana, to the record. The robe feels heavier now than it did at dawn. It is about to meet the story. And that puts the weight on you. In his seat, wearing that robe, what would you do? Paul, which hat do you wear? A, the witness, uphold the rule, step down, and speak your truth. B, the judge, maintain control of the proceedings to ensure justice. Comment A or B below, because the next time we see Judge Vance, he may not be on the bench at all. The room holds its breath, the way an audience does when it senses a turn. Ada Naomi Brooks stands. Your Honor, the next exhibit bears on officer credibility and touches the court's own incident. Under the standing order, the people request substitution for this limited segment. Judge Elias Vance doesn't explain. He nods once. Substitution granted. He rises, unfastens the robe, folds it in half, sets it beside the gavel. Two emblems at rest, like tools put down between blows. For a beat, the chair he's warmed all day sits empty. The gallery leans forward as if gravity shifted. Power hasn't left. It has obeyed a rule. Vance disappears through the side door. All rise. Judge Lorraine Park enters from the opposite door and takes the chair. She lets the silence do the introduction. This segment is narrow, she says. We will hear the cameras, then the minimum foundation. The firewall remains. Exhibit A, Naomi says. CCTV blooms across the screens. Rain varnishes the exit lane into black glass. The white stop line glows under the gate light. A sedan glides, squares to the line, and settles. Brake lights hold, unwavering. 1 second, 2, 3. The right signal blinks amber. Only then do the wheels roll. Freeze, Naomi says. The still frame shows everything the training manual loves. Wheels motionless, lamps steady, position before the line, signal engaged first. In the gallery, a quiet exhale moves row to row. At the defense table, Victor Hale's pen stops tapping. Pierce's jaw hardens. Fletcher's thumb hovers over his coat button and doesn't dare touch it. Exhibit B, Patrol Dashcam, Naomi says. The angle shifts. The cruiser idles offset behind the sedan. Rain stipples the windshield. The stop sign isn't in frame. The A-pillar eats it whole. Cabin audio wakes, a low engine hum, radio's faint breath. Pause at 8 seconds. The frame freezes on the sedan's rear quarter. No sign, no line. This is behind. A view that leaves out the one fact the law requires. The gallery understands it without being told. A blind spot is not a truth. It's a hole where truth should be. Exhibit C, Naomi says. Phone video. A portrait frame opens from the back seat of a minivan. Rain freckles glass. A child's whisper nudges the lens toward the gate. Brake lights hold, patient red. Across the bottom, words rise in white. Did he stop? A siren chirps. A Bodycam beeps awake. 2 quick clicks of handcuffs bite louder than the weather. For officer safety, an off-screen voice says. The sound moves through the room like a small shock. A woman in the gallery covers her mouth. Hale's shoulders go very still. Fletcher looks at the floor. Pierce stares at nothing. Judge Park studies the 3 frozen frames. Gate, rear, phone, she says. Together they speak to what happened and to what did not. She lets the images sit long enough to change the air. Then she nods once. The people call Elias Vance for foundation only. The side door opens. Vance returns without the robe. The bench behind him is empty. The difference is visible from the back row. A man who decides cases is about to answer questions. He takes the witness chair. The oath sounds the same, but the room hears it in a new key. Naomi keeps it spare. State your name. Elias Vance. On the night in question, did you approach the supermarket exit and stop before the line? Yes. How long did you hold the brake? Long enough to count to 3. Was your right turn signal engaged before the vehicle began to move? Yes. Did you consent to a search of your vehicle? No. Did you comply with instructions? Yes. Does the video sequence reflect what occurred in front of you? It does. Anything to add? He looks at the monitors, not the gallery. Nothing the cameras haven't said better. A murmur gathers and dies. The power of the moment isn't in volume. It's in the sight of a judge choosing to let pictures carry his words. Humility in a place that often rewards voice. Hale rises for a narrow cross. Mr. Vance, you testify as a witness, not as judge. I do. You offer no opinion on the court's conclusions. Correct, he says. Only what I saw and did. No more questions. Witness excused, Judge Park says. Vance steps down the same quiet way he stepped up. He vanishes through the side door. On the table, the robe rests beside the gavel. 2 instruments waiting for their turn, not their triumph. Judge Park addresses the record, but her words land in the room's ribs. The court has now seen 3 synchronized angles. The overhead shows a complete stop with brake illumination and turn signal before movement. The patrol dashcam documents the rear vantage point and its blind spot. The phone video captures the siren, the body camera tone, and the sound of handcuffs. She adds the bridge that ties images to duty. Earlier segments established documentation standards: time at rest, tire position, brake light observations, and their absence in related reports. Those standards will be weighed against the video. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. Excuses tend to shrink when light expands, she says. She looks to counsel. Judge Park studies the 3 frozen frames. Gate, rear, phone. She lets the room breathe with them, then speaks. Enough for today. Court recesses until 9 a.m. tomorrow. 1 rap of the gavel. Exact. The doors open, but the energy doesn't leave the building. It spills into the city. Cut. A phone screen blooms against the rain dark. The caption rides across it in white. Did he stop? The share arrow jumps from a neighborhood group to a parents' chat, to a local newsroom. Late night radio. You're listening to City After Dark. Tell me what you saw in that clip. A TV Chiron hums. Gate cam versus dash cam. Whose truth? At the Vance kitchen window, rain lines the glass. Alana rests a hand on his shoulder. Keep your dignity, she says. Let the light do the rest. Night gathers around the painted stop line, as if saving the answer for morning. Dawn plates the courthouse steps in gold. A notice on the door reads, "Hearing resumes at 9 a.m. Inside, Judge Park sits first, firewall intact. She nods toward the side door. Invite Judge Vance to return. Vance steps out in the robe, no speech, just a single nod. Today, he says. Daylight finishes the story. Morning has edges, sun on the courthouse steps, shoes on marble. The room settles like a lung filling with air. Judge Vance returns to the bench in the robe. No speech, one nod. Call your witness. Rafiq Patel, Ada Naomi Brooks says. A man in a neat sweater takes the stand. Mr. Patel, Naomi begins, what is your relation to the grocery? I'm the assistant manager, he says. 8 years. Do you know Elias Vance outside this courtroom? Patel nods. He's a regular. Comes by for medicine, fruit, sometimes flowers. Pays with a card. His name on it. Did you see him the night in question? Yes. He bought cough drops and a rotisserie chicken. No hurry. No hiding. Anything about him that raised concern? Patel shakes his head. Only that he looked tired. Ortiz, security tech, confirms what the gate cam shows. Tires behind the line, brake lights steady for 3 seconds, right signal before movement. Counsel, Judge Vance says. Hale rises, shifts tone. The defense calls Officer Landon Pierce. Pierce takes the stand, jaw cabled tight. He swears in, eyes scanning the gallery as if searching for a friend he hasn't earned. Hale's voice turns low, almost intimate. Officer Pierce, tell the court about your beat. Pierce exhales through his nose. 3rd District, night shift. We get calls that don't wait. Guns in glove boxes, fentanyl in air vents. If you don't stay ahead, you walk behind a hearse. Do supervisors push you to be proactive? Hale asks. They push us to come home, Pierce says. Proactive is how you do that. Hale nods. So when you stop a car for a minor infraction, what are you really doing? Looking for what keeps the next mother from burying a son, Pierce says. Naomi stands for cross. She doesn't reach for heat. She reaches for weight. Officer Pierce, let's place your words on a table with facts, she says. She holds up a printout the room already knows. Your shift stop rate rose after a memo targeted plus 15%. Your hit rate fell. Complaints rose. In your reports, the training markers are mostly blank. In Mr. Ramirez's stop, Naomi continues, Dashcam audio captured 3 signal clicks before the lane change. Overhead captured wheels still and brake lights steady for 3 seconds. Your form recorded none of that. I saw what I saw, Pierce says, jaw harder. From behind, Naomi answers. At night. He holds her gaze. Yes. Officer, she says, voice steady. Is there a reason those objective markers weren't written down? I prioritize safety, he says. Over documentation? Over getting killed by paperwork, he snaps. The room shifts. Hale blinks. Naomi doesn't. Do you believe your beat is different from other parts of the city? She asks. It is, he says. Ask anybody who lives there. And who lives there? Naomi asks, neutral. People, he says. People who don't always care about signs. The silence asks him to stop. He does not hear it. In those blocks, he continues, a stop sign's a suggestion. You wait for perfect markers and you miss guns. You have to be ahead of them. If we're not proactive, who is? The word hangs. Them. No one moves. Even the court reporter's keys pause before catching up. Naomi doesn't raise her voice. Them, she repeats. Who is them, officer? He swallows. The badge on his chest catches a ribbon of light that has nowhere to go. Look, he says, hands open like he can shape the air. You know what I mean. The blocks with darker windows, the people who look at you and... He hears himself now. He sees it, late. I didn't mean... he tries. But the room has already heard exactly what he meant. A slip isn't a stumble. It's a confession. Naomi keeps to the gentlest edge of the blade. Officer Pierce, she says, are you telling this court you allow race to inform stops? Hale is up. Objection, misstates. Pierce answers before the gavel. I'm telling you context matters, he says. You don't do this job blind. Judge Vance lifts a hand. The objection falls away. Naomi lowers the printout onto the rail, palms flat. Context doesn't erase evidence, she says, and it doesn't excuse missing it. She steps back. Nothing further. Hale stands in a smaller room than he started with. He tries to rebuild a fence with words that no longer stack. Officer, he says, you meant proactive against crime, not people. Pierce looks cornered by his own sentence. Yes, he says, but it doesn't repair what the air remembers. No further questions, Hale says, the line costing him. Judge Vance leans to the mic, voice even. For the record, we heard testimony that Mr. Vance is a known customer who pays openly and behaves without haste. We saw the gate camera establish a full stop with brake illumination and signal. We heard the Dashcam audio. We heard the phone clip. We heard explanations for proactive policing, and we heard an admission that, at least in language, context, has been confused with category. In this court, he adds, the sign is not a suggestion. The standard is not a rumor. We judge facts, not faces. He nods to the clerk. Officer Pierce may step down. Pierce rises. The badge on his chest flashes, and for once, it doesn't enchant. It reflects. That's all. When a badge faces a conscience, it stops being a charm. The robe is back on his shoulders. Judge Elias Vance takes the bench. The gavel touches wood. Short, dry, final. A flat graphic wakes on the monitors. Open lens stops policy in bold, clean letters. The room leans toward the light. A gavel doesn't replace the light, Vance says. It flips the switch. He breathes once, not to gather power, but to place it. This court rules on two planes, the particular and the public. On the particular, the officers before us. On the public, the habits that brought us here. Today's order speaks to both. He nods to the screen. Plain English, measurable, no fog. This policy is effective immediately. 1. Individual discipline and consequence. Officer Landon Pierce is suspended without pay, effective now, and referred to the State Post Authority for decertification review. The district attorney will list him as a Giglio Brady-impaired witness. Any future case must disclose his credibility issues. If he returns to duty pending final disposition, he is barred from traffic or consent-based stops, and stop-related testimony will not be received absent objective corroboration. Officer Daniels Fletcher will undergo retraining, bias awareness, and objective stop documentation, followed by a 12-month probation under an independent supervisor. Any further lapse escalates to suspension. 2. Mandatory stop grounds. Every traffic stop will include objective markers recorded on the spot. Line position, time at rest, and signal timing where applicable. Vague phrases, evasive glance, looked suspicious, are prohibited as standalone grounds. If the brake lights speak, the forms will listen. If the line exists, the notes will name it. 3. Bodycam, Dashcam, always on. Activation begins with the first flash of the patrol lights and runs through the conclusion of the stop. Units will perform a start-of-shift auto-check for signal integrity. Equipment failure is a safety issue. Documentation failure is an integrity issue. Both will be treated like the risks they are. 4. Redefining performance. Hit rate, not stop count, is the indicator of effective enforcement. Substantiated complaints will factor into evaluations. If your number goes up and truth goes down, that is not success. That is noise. Change the metric, change the behavior. 5. Look back and sunlight. The department will conduct a 2.5-year review of the Pierce team and similarly situated units. Quarterly public dashboards will report stop rates, hit rates, consent search rates, and sustained complaints by shift and precinct, with notice to affected motorists where remedies are available. Sunlight is not a headline. It is hygiene. 6. Anonymous reporting line. Effective today, there is an anonymous channel for residents and for officers to flag misuse of pretext stops. Retaliation is forbidden. Good faith reports are protected. Stop is not a suggestion. Vance lets the bullet points hold on the screen for a long breath. Then he returns to the sentence that threaded rain to daylight. We judge facts, not faces, he says. A sign is not a rumor. A standard is not a wish. He faces the parties. This city deserves safety and dignity. We will not bargain one away to rent the other for a night. The measure is no longer how many times you stop a person. It is how often you find the truth you claim to seek. He looks at Pierce and Fletcher, not to humiliate, but to make sure the door is visible. You can do this job the right way. Plenty do. The new rule is not a punishment. It is a path. He turns to the gallery. For those who were stopped and could not prove what a camera would have shown, you were seen too late. This policy is one way to see you earlier next time. He looks to the clerk. Enter the order and circulate it to command and training today. The dashboard schedule begins this quarter. The hotline goes live by midnight. He returns to the words that began his morning. A gavel doesn't replace the light. It flips the switch. We flipped it. Court will recess for 1 hour for administrative matters, then reconvene. The slide stays up as people stand. On it, 6 lines look almost simple enough to fit in a pocket. Discipline and consequence. Markers, not hunches. Cameras that don't blink. Metrics that mean something. Sunlight you can read. A door to speak without fear. No cheer rises. Something steadier does. A sense that rules, when written plain and kept in daylight, can carry more weight than anger ever could. In the back row, someone finally exhales. It sounds like gratitude remembering its own name. Outside, daylight waits on the steps. Inside, the robe is only cloth until the rule gives it shape. Today, the rule remembered what it is for. Not the victory of a man, but the dignity of a city learning to stop at the line, count to 3, and signal before it moves. The first dashboard arrives like a weather report that finally matches the sky. On the city site, clean bars slide from left to right. Stop rate disparities narrow across precincts. Hit rate climbs quarter over quarter. Night shift complaints curve down and keep going. The legend is plain enough for a phone screen. The lesson is plainer. Change the metric, change the behavior. A second dashboard follows with the same calm insistence. Fewer consent searches from signaling or equipment stops. More reports with time at rest and tire line boxes filled in. Bodycam uptime hovers near perfect, When a unit drops signal, the next graph shows it was caught at roll call and fixed. The numbers don't shout. They agree. On the avenue, patrol cars still pull over cars. The difference is how. Officers count seconds instead of hunches. Brake lights are described, not guessed. The phrase, by eye from behind, gives way to as recorded. When a stop ends with nothing found, the paper says so without apology, and the next stop begins without a grudge. At the grocery, Fletcher stands in civilian clothes near the counter where flowers lean toward the light. He listens while Patel sketches a simple map on a receipt, how the exit lane bends, how the floodlight hits the paint, how a camera never blinks. Fletcher nods, not as a performance, but because you nod when a thing is true. Thanks, he says, for telling me straight. Sergeant Kincaid passes on his way to the door, taps the counter twice, and gives a small nod that reads the same in any language. Doable. Around the city, the silence changes shape. Call-in shows spend fewer minutes on traffic stops and more on potholes, school marching bands, the new mural on Hawthorne. The complaint portal doesn't close. It grows quiet in the way a room does when people feel heard before they have to raise their voices. Sunlight keeps its schedule, and so does the dashboard. On the courthouse steps, two boys run ahead with backpacks bouncing, landing in the gravity of their father's coat. Alana walks a pace behind, not in spotlight, just in frame, and rests a hand between Elias Vance's shoulders. People pass with nods that say more than a speech. Thank you, keep going, see you tomorrow. Vance doesn't hold court on the stairs. He holds his sons, then the railing, then the door. Inside, a clerk toggles the next quarter's template. The policy slides have already been exported to training. In the hallway, a rookie copies the line Vance said twice and underlines it once. We judge facts, not faces. It is not a slogan, it is a setting. Justice delivered is when dignity doesn't have to shout, only be seen. They still stop cars, but they stop right. A sign is no longer a rumor. A standard is no longer a wish. 3 seconds count. A turn signal speaks. A form listens. If you zoom out far enough, the story looks simple. A night with rain, a question in white letters, a bench that knew when to sit and when to stand, a policy that flipped the switch. Zoom back in and it looks simpler. A hand on a back, a nod at a counter, a city learning to move with its lights on. Did you stop right and still get stopped? Tell your story.